So Bill, Dee, I will let you all take it away.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody, and we sure appreciate having the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon. I think the essence of our comments today really revolves around the fact that we have a serious crisis on our hands, known as homelessness here in Austin. And for too long, we have not addressed this issue like the crisis that it is. We have seen examples in our own community, whether it goes back to Katrina years ago, Hurricane Ike, where within days after these events have happened, we have had facilities stood up, ready to go, services on hand, waiting for thousands of people to come in on buses into our community that are quickly or have quickly been assimilated either into our community as new residents or provided for until such time they could return to their own communities. That's how you deal with a crisis. What we are seeing here is 3 months process, slow play. We must have more action immediately to address the crisis that this is. People are dying on our streets every single day. The issue is being further politicized, we believe, and the people who are experiencing homelessness are becoming the political pawns in this, and that is not good for anyone. This continues to further divide our community. We need to unite, but we need immediate action to address the crisis that we have, starting with places for people to be immediately. Last week, May 6th, City Council passed a resolution directing the manager to come back with recommendations on city-owned land, land owned by other public entities or private partners that are willing to consider dedicating land that could be used as dedicated or sanctioned places where people can be with services provided to meet their immediate pressing needs to get them into the homeless service system and hopefully on a faster track to resolving their homelessness. What we're hearing today on the call with the city manager, the press conference at noon, was the city is looking at park space. The only thing mentioned on that call was parks and parks facilities. Whether it was just an omission, not mentioning the fact that they're looking at other city facilities or other opportunities, I don't know. But the fact that we would only talk about using parks, which at this moment, for this past year, have been used by the community probably to a greater extent than ever before, and taking public use assets and utilizing them for homeless services, we think is irresponsible. There are certainly many other City of Austin properties that aren't for public use that could potentially be used. We think that this discussion or consideration needs to be broader than just parks. In fact, I'm not sure parks should be used at all for this purpose. We have too many other options that we have yet to be discovered. But this needs to be acted upon quickly. That has to be part of our homeless service system. We continue talking about the focus on creating permanent housing. We know that's important. The Downtown Austin Alliance has been part of advocating for increased permanent housing for many, many years. But focusing only on housing has gotten us where we are today in terms of a problem that has increasing numbers of people experiencing homelessness overall and drastically increased numbers of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We clearly need more resources piled on the front end of our system while we are bolstering up the system and permanent housing resources on the back end so that people move through a system and don't languish. But right now, we feel that the voters have spoken, demanding change, and we are not seeing quick enough action to address the growing crisis on the street. Thank you for that.
With that, we'd love to open it up for questions, whether you want to put it in the chat or raise your hand, and then go ahead and take yourself off of mute and on camera, and we can allow Dee and Bill to address those. Questions from anyone right now in the media?
Bill, Ryan Atula with the Statesman here. If not parks, where might be a good place to put a sanctioned campsite?
Ryan, I don't have a specific property or number of properties in mind. The city of Austin itself, though, as we all know, owns numerous facilities and properties across the entire city. I think that an ideal strategy would be to say, here's a north, south, east, west, and central location identified by the city manager next week at the latest. that says, here's first out of the gate optional sites where we can move people immediately. We need to repurpose city resources to stand up the facilities that are needed, the services that are needed for those folks. So let's come out with a real strategy. It shouldn't be one place. It probably should not be parks that are for the general public's use. Let's use facilities that aren't traditionally open for public use that could be used and repurposed. I think that's really, that could be part of an important strategy, but I think we need to identify different locations in all parts of the city. Let's face it, homelessness is all across the city. If people are experiencing homelessness in North Austin and there's a site nearby, they could go there potentially. The same with downtown or other locations or other areas. So I think being strategic about it, not just focusing one-dimensionally on parks. And again, that's all that was mentioned today. Whether there's more to that just wasn't mentioned, we don't really know. But I think to come out of the gate and say, right now we're looking at all of our parks, kind of flies in the face of what the voters were asking for. We want our public spaces open, healthy, and safe for everyone.
And Bill, there's a question, this can go to be Bill or Dee. There's a question from John Cooley with KLBJ in the chat saying, would y'all mind expanding on why parks should not be on the table for this?
Dee, you want to take that one? Or you want?
I'll take the one. And I think, John, again, my name's DeWitt Peart. I'm CEO of the Downtown Austin Alliance. Parks are public space meant for the enjoyment of everyone. Right. And very similar to what we see happening currently around City Hall on the public space in City Hall. It's really impinging on everyone's use and enjoyment of the public realm. And parks are a finite resource meant to be enjoyed by everyone. And it just doesn't make sense to take something away from someone, right, for a use like this, when we know that there are other sites available that could better accommodate these designated campsites.
Thank you. Anyone else from the media have a question? Oh, it looks like we have one from Community Impact. Ben Thompson wants to know, what have you heard so far from downtown business/property owners about the city's phased enforcement plan and how it may affect their sites?
Thank you. I think what we've heard is really less specific about the phased approach. What we're hearing, though, especially right now, where there are 57 tents today around City Hall, Second Street businesses, for example, City Hall businesses, being directly impacted by what's happening there, closing, in fact, closing at least temporarily, because of the conditions down there today. What we're hearing is our businesses and other employers, frontline businesses, restaurants, retailers that are on ground floor levels and other employers where people are just now starting to come back to work, hotels that are just now starting to have visitors again, are being set back, okay? So we've got to act quicker. I think that the fact that we're saying we've got, the voters have spoken, but now we've got 3 months of process, does not answer the call the voters were seeking. And I would add to that, what we've heard thus far in response to Proposition B passing has only been about enforcement or lack thereof process about the camping ordinance. We have not heard any comments about the aggressive solicitation piece of that and what's happening in terms of enforcement of that. We have not heard anything about what's happening in terms of the sit-lie ordinance. These are ordinances that used to be in effect both downtown and across the city that the voters approved on May 1st, banning solicitation between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. near ATMs, crosswalks, bus stops, schools, and other locations that is threatening if people are asked for money. We've not heard anything about action steps being taken to immediately begin enforcing those ordinances, which we believe could be going into effect and should be going into effect immediately. It's about more than just camping. Camping, we've heard the plan. It's 3 months, it's education, it's warning, it's this. But there are 2 other components to that we've not heard anything about. And we know that one of the most threatening experiences for people, particularly visitors to downtown Austin, is when they are aggressively solicited, aggressively panhandled. That could be enforced immediately. We believe it should be enforced immediately, yet we've heard nothing about that or the sit-lie ordinance.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions right now you can put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Another one from me. With the goals coming out of the summit, how does the Alliance plan to coordinate with the city, with other organizations to get those 3,000 units up and going in the next 3 years?
Dee, I'm happy to kick it off.
Good one.
So first of all, I think that you all probably know the Downtown Austin Alliance, among other partners, including the city and Echo and the Chamber, among many more, were instrumental in putting the summit together. And I think that largely coming out of the summit, our strategy is unchanged. However, I think that we are in a different place today than we were when the summit concluded on April 12th, meaning that Proposition B has passed it and the voters have spoken. And so I think that if we focus on building a homeless service system that is effective, we recognize that there's a different environment today than there was when the summit ended. We have to focus on the front end of the system, how we provide resources, places for people to be where they can first of all, get into the homeless service system and hopefully on a faster track moving through that system to resolve their homelessness. So I think by and large, we're in the same place. We have a goal for housing 3,000 people in 3 years. That remains unchanged. We have short-term goals, house 100 people by the end of June, 100 more by the end of August, et cetera. I think those all stand the same, but I think we have to have a system, we must have a system that's able to modulate based on the conditions at any current time. So right now, we're in a different place than we were April 12th. We've got to be able to adjust course and accommodate for that by immediately providing places people can be, get them in the system, and moving through that system as quickly as possible. Yeah, I don't know if you had anything to add to that. Sorry, guys.
No, I'll just add that, if you've seen the information that came out of the summit, there was a system map, and contained in that map, one of the identified solution sets is services and shelter. And we believe that these campsites could provide that as part of the solution set. So we believe it is absolutely part of the system map. It's identified in the system that was a result of the summit.
I would go on for just a moment to say that, make no mistake about it. We are not suggesting, sorry, I'm getting an echo. We are not suggesting, I'm getting an echo there. We're not suggesting that people going into designated or sanctioned encampments living in tents is adequate by any stretch. It's not adequate. All right. There are new ideas. There are new things happening in terms of prototyping micro shelter units, shelters where individuals or a couple could live in literally a micro unit structure. We know that still today, coming out of the pandemic, the congregate shelters, large structures where people are in high numbers in congregate facilities, still are not safe or healthy. Our local shelters, Arch, Salvation Army, are still operating below capacity, as are other shelters around the country for those reasons. There are new ideas, different suggestions being tested out there. Camp Esperanza is doing this currently, testing micro shelter units. This could be set up differently. It could be set up better than you don't have to live in a tent. We have a structure where you can close the door, lock it, have your belongings inside, have storage for other belongings that don't fit inside, have restrooms, have showers, a place to do your laundry, a place to store your belongings that'll freeze you to go to a job, go to a case management appointment, go to treatment for behavioral health or physical health needs. These are all the things that could happen at sanctioned or designated encampments that take this into a completely different realm than just having people moving their tents to a piece of dirt and camped out there. That is not adequate. We're not suggesting that is adequate. But what we need is something better, a better alternative to living under the bridge, to living in the park, to living on the sidewalk that offers people a faster pathway to resolve their homelessness. Pardon me.
Thank you, Bill. We have time for about one more question. Any other questions or any follow-up questions from anything you have heard? And I do want to point out that in the chat, we have listed Bill and Dee's names and titles to make sure that you have accurate spelling for that. But any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, with that, I think it concludes. I don't know, Bill D, if you want to kind of give a closing statement or your final thoughts on anything, then we can go ahead and wrap up. And of course, everyone, you know where to find us. If you have additional questions after this, please do reach out to Elizabeth Christian Public Relations.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leah. I guess I would close where I began. We've got to treat homelessness like the crisis that it is. Allowing people to languish on the streets another day, another month, another year, 3 months, that is not going to work. We have to treat this like the crisis that it is. More needs to be done, and more needs to be done faster. We have got to move the ball on this quickly, and right now, our numbers have demonstrated we need more resources on the front end of the system to give people reasonable alternatives to camping and living in places never intended for people to be living. That's not safe and healthy for the people out there. It's not safe and healthy for the rest of the public. We have got to act faster.